Okay, moving on to ethical and practical considerations when looking at your research. Whatever method you decide to deploy, there'll be a cost. In your case, there will be not a financial cost, but a cost in time. You need to look at the research tools, the methods that you are considering, and weigh up the amount of time and implication cost in terms of your time that this will take, and to see if it's practical to do so. Nice, lovely looking chap here. The other thing that very much needs to be considered in any research, but thinking particularly of your research, is skills and characteristics of the interviewer, namely you probably. If you are to interview people, who you are is going to make a lot of difference perhaps to the way people respond. In other words, if you are male, white, you may get a different response depending on who you're talking to than if you're female or of a different type of category within society. So your own characteristics, i.e. who you are, will make a difference. Also, what needs to be considered is your own skills in collecting the data. You are not a data collection agency, so you may consider your skills at trying to collect information when thinking about the methods you're going to use. Sensitive subject matter needs to be dealt with sensitively. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? If you are going to ask someone personal questions that may cause embarrassment or flinching, or to put their hand over their heads like this, you may need to consider how you build up to the question, how you get the right environment for the person not to be shocked when the question is answered. And you need to think again in connection with personal characteristics. You need to think about the environment in which these sensitive issues, or if you are going to deal with sensitive issues, may be dealt with. Linked to that also is the idea of consent. Meaningful consent is important, otherwise you're at risk of exploiting your subjects or those that take part in your interview. They need to be knowingly participate and understand what the nature of the survey is and what you're doing. That is not as easy as it may appear. If you can alter the perception of you or alter what they will say because of the perception of you, you may be altering the figures. For instance, as a researcher in my day, the company I worked for was commissioned a number of times to do surveys of a political nature on behalf of the Conservative Party. If we had introduced ourselves as phoning on behalf of the Conservative Party, I think the responses may have been different than if, as we did, we said we're phoning from an independent market research firm. Okay, so do you see what I mean? That there are all sorts of problems. If you phone up and you say that you're doing a survey looking at large investments and business generated into the area, someone might see it as an opportunity to take part in the survey and not give you answers in an unbiased way. In other words, they'll give you answers they think you want to hear. If they think there might be some reward for giving the right answers, they might give you different answers. Consent and an understanding of what you're doing is very important, but how you inform the respondent may well have an impact on the data collected. Confidentiality. In order for people to be free with their opinion, they must be convinced that the information or their opinion will not be directly traceable back to them. So you need to be able to assure them that the data you collect is entirely confidential. If you're thinking of covert participation, I'm not sure many of you would be, but if you are going to participate with a group in order to get an ethnographic feel for how they are and who they are, and say you run with a gang running on the streets of South London, and I think I'm a bit old for it, but if you did, there are ethical considerations. Are you supporting an activity that is potentially criminal? Are you yourself breaking the law in order to do this research and to keep in with the gang? Is that ethically fair? Is that ethically right to do that? So you need to think about what you're doing and whether how it coincides with the law. Also, if you are to interview vulnerable groups, particular concern needs to be given to how you recruit these and then how you interview them. Children, of course, need the consent of their parents, but you also need to be thinking about how you phrase things and the sensitivity of the subject matter. If you talk about various other groups, physical, mental disabilities, you need to consider how you are going to approach these vulnerable groups in society in such a way as to ensure that there is no exploitation or undue harm caused.